What if the largest dinosaur species of all time never fossilized? Hey everyone, Mike here with Prehistoric Magazine. Welcome back to another video. Now, this is an interesting question. At least it's interesting to myself. I hope you guys find it interesting as well. But, what if the largest dinosaur of all time never fossilized? Now, again, this is another one of those questions why you guessed it. That's why that comment section down there is so vastly important. Really want to hear what you have to say at the end of this video. But, for the purposes of this video and in preparation for it, I did a little bit of thinking and I thought about, should it be the largest dinosaur of all time or the largest dinosaur species? Now, I think if we say, what if the largest dinosaur of all time never fossilized? I think we can probably say with certainty that that's happened. Out of the existing species that we have for sauropods, because let's face it, we're talking about sauropods here. Out of the existing giant sauropods that we have, it is almost next to none that we have the largest individuals from those species. I'm going to say it's almost 0% chance. There's no way that we have a couple handful, a dozen T-Rexes, or two or three other skeletons, and one of those is the largest of all time of that species. So for the purposes of this video, I'm talking about what if the largest dinosaur species of all time never fossilized. Now, again, in preparation for this video and in doing some research, fossilization is an incredibly rare process, but it is true that the bigger the animal, the more likely, or maybe not the more likely, but the greater likelihood that it may fossilize. And let's face it, sauropods have giant bones, and there's a lot of giant bones. So all of that gives a greater advantage for someone finding it tens upon tens upon tens of millions of years later. But, again, fossilization is an incredibly rare event. And it's almost kind of mind-boggling when you really think about, a sauropod, who knows how long ago, 100 million years ago, 95 million years ago, eating and dying, maybe in a catastrophic flood or something. And, that giant animal is down and out for the count. Now, if it's down and out for the count and it's on dry land, there's no way that an animal that size isn't ringing the dinner bell for all to come. Also, decomposition, stuff like that, insects, everything that's going to break that body down over time. But an enormous animal like that to fall and go down, or just to die of old age or whatever, what have you, there's no way in hell that that's not a massive ringing of the dinner bell. So chances are that animal is going to get scavenged, and then the bones are going to get broken apart, and it's probably not going to set itself up for fossilization. But if an animal gets buried in something like a flood and buried instantly under just a massive amount of mud and silt, then it does increase the chances for fossilization. And then over time, minerals in the water, turn those bones into kind of rock. At least that's the way, or a fossil. At least that's the way kind of I understand it. Some of you guys out there are quite a bit more intelligent than myself. I do not want to pose that I'm an expert on fossilization, but it's kind of a mind-altering, concept, this idea that an animal fell however many years ago, 94 million years ago, and then 94 million years later, there's a human with a little dental pick to poke it out and extract part of it from the ground. Now, as I was saying, if the animal is buried under sediment and all sorts of river organic matter, then over time it's going to turn into a fossil. But that's not the end of the story. Then as more time goes by and that riverbed or that sea, recedes, because right now we don't know where we're talking about. I could be talking about anywhere on planet Earth, so I'm not limiting myself to a certain geographic location. But as a river possibly recedes and dries up, or as a sea possibly recedes and dries up, then those fossils have to be eroded by wind and time. I think I once read a quote that it said, wind and time are the friend of the paleontologist. If you go out to a desert, if you go out to the Gobi Desert, if you go out to the Sahara Desert, I've never been to either of those, would love to travel to one of those places, but, just the constant pressure of wind and the landscape shifting, let's face it, in a desert, winds, the high winds that are in deserts can dramatically alter the landscapes. And Every year, as millions of years go by, just constantly eroding, wearing down the rock on top of the surface until finally, maybe at long last, there's bone poking through, or at least some evidence of it. But that's not the end of the story. We still need to have a paleontologist on the other end who is there, or maybe not a paleontologist, or someone, a farmer, someone on the other end that is potentially looking for it, like they've gone looking for it, or they know what they're looking for. Imagine how many people, I'm probably going to say I haven't, but imagine how many people have probably stumbled over some type of dinosaur fossil and they just didn't know what it looked like. So, people, what I'm getting at here is the odds are just ridiculous. Amazing that we've even found what we found. But imagine someone stumbling upon something and they just think it's a petrified log, or they just think it's some type of rock. They don't know what they're looking at. I'm probably that person. I'm not a paleontologist. I'm not an expert on removing fossils from the ground, but there is just such an enormous chance of, it's almost like the lottery for some of these animals to be preserved. And what I'm asking you all is, what if the largest dinosaur species of all time never fossilized? We never even know that it existed. Incredibly frustrating that we just can't say what was the largest. We just can't go back. I say that all the time. Again, that's why the comment section is so vastly important. If you're still watching, I greatly appreciate the support. Love for you to subscribe as well. Trying to get to 20,000 subscribers. I'm almost about 180 away, so trying to get to that milestone. So thank you for that. But love to hear your comments on that. What do you think about this? Do you think that out of the large sauropods that we have, do you think that one of those animals represents the largest species of all time? Now, something I want to point out before I leave you guys with this video is I didn't say what do we think the largest animal of all time can achieve, because that's kind of another topic in its own right. Obviously, the bigger the animal, the more pressure, and there are limits as to how big a land-dwelling animal can get. But I didn't say, what do you think about the largest animal of all time? I just said, what if the largest dinosaur of all time never fossilized? Depending on who you ask, sauropods exceed 100 tons. I've even read some people lately where they said sauropods only weighed around 40 tons, most of them. So again, very difficult to estimate the weights of extinct animals. But for the purposes of this video, what are your thoughts on, what do you think the chances are that the largest dinosaur of all time, the largest dinosaur species of all time, never fossilized? Greatly appreciate all the support. Take care. See you in the next video.